Great. Well, good morning, everybody. We're going to get started. We will call this meeting to order at 9:36 a.m. on Wednesday, March 20th, 2024. And I think we can go ahead and take a roll call. And just for your awareness, we are recording. So just like we always do. Great. So I have from HED, Patricia Trujillo. Yeah. Okay. GSD, Robert Doucette. Okay. PED, Breezy Gutierrez. No. EDD, that's me. I'm Kayla Lacerda Matusi. DFA, Leo Delgado. No. MNerd, Anna Linden Weller.
Hi.
Anna Linden is here. Let's see. Environment Department, Sydney Linneman. State Land Office, Steve Bierk.
Present.
Great. Hi, Steve. DWS, do we have Raquel Gomez?
Present.
Hi, Raquel. TRD, Lucinda Cito. Do we have our Sustainable Economy Advisory Council Chair, James Probiwong? No. IAD, Michael Chacon.
Aquino Mas.
Hi, Michael.
Hello.
Okay, SIC, Charlie Woolman.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great. Michael, do you know if we have quorum?
Kayla, you have quorum. We have 7 members out of 13 for the task force present, so that's a majority of 53%, so you're good.
All right, well, let me share my screen and I can show you the agenda for today. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, so last time we had a bit of a mix-up and we approved the wrong minutes, so we're just going to go ahead and approve minutes for September 2023 and December 2023. Could I get a motion to approve minutes for September, and I will put those up on the screen as well.
This is Steve, so moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Just a second, I'm figuring out how to toggle here. Okay. Here are the September minutes. Could all in favor of approving, please raise your virtual hand or say aye.
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 Okay, great. And now we will move to our December minutes. And just so you're aware, this was the joint session with the advisory council. Great. Okay, could we get a motion to approve these December minutes?
Steve, so moved.
Steve, you were first. Michael, is that a second?
Yes.
Okay, great. Could all in favor raise their virtual hands or say aye?
I,
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Great. Okay, so moved. And yeah, so we have a few things to run through. I'm just sharing my screen again with this agenda for today. And I'll tell you a little bit of background later about what's going on with the advisory council, but my hope for today's meeting is to tell you where we're at and how we picture these two bodies working more closely together in the future, the advisory council and the task force. But we do have an item on here to potentially shift the date of the task force meetings, and that will be an action item. But first, I'll just tell you a little bit about it and see how you feel. In discussing amongst our team and with advisory council members, we think that it could make a lot of sense to have the advisory council meetings precede the task force meetings every month. And that way, when you guys are having your task force discussions, they can be informed by what the advisory council is doing. And we have a plan to move through all of the priority items that are listed in the state plan. So we feel that that could make a lot of sense in terms of SEEK providing its vision and the task force thinking about how that might become reality. And so right now, for example, looking at next week, the advisory council meeting will take place on the 26th at 3 p.m. And typically that's, what is that, a fourth Tuesday in the month. And so that sort of leaves us with, either the following Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday of that same week. Or we could even move it to the next week if folks are really pressed for a time to schedule this, but it would be great to have them within the same month so that people don't get confused. But I would love to just open up some discussion and see how you feel about that. And we also have Shani and Michael Guerrero here as well. And, we had discussed this amongst ourselves. So I would love to just hear thoughts from our task force about the possibility of changing the date to make things function a bit more smoothly.
I, in principle, think it's a great idea. Personally, I may have some difficulty with scheduling conflicts in the last week of the month. These are usually on Wednesday mornings. I serve on several boards and they often meet the last week of the month in the morning, both on Wednesdays and on Thursdays. And I don't know if other people have similar issues, but it might be possible. But if we could find a time that was mutually agreeable to the majority of the task force participants, I think the last week of the month is a good idea.
Does anyone else have thoughts on this proposal?
I think that's right on point. I have got the same issues, but on Tuesday. So, but in theory, that should make some better efficiency if we meet prior to the larger group.
Sean?
So I was thinking, maybe potentially a Wednesday afternoon would work if we switched it to Wednesday afternoon instead of Wednesday morning, and we did it after the advisory council meetings. That would kind of give, our team time to kind of collate whatever happened on the meeting beforehand, hopefully within 24 hours. And then we could keep it to afternoon, and it could mimic kind of the same time as Seek, and we could do a 3 to 4 or 3 to 4:30, kind of however time rolls out. Would afternoons work better for the group? And then we could also just, we can send out a poll too to see if that works for folks.
Afternoon is better for me, but I'm one person.
You're one important person. Yeah, we can, like Shawnee said, we can do a poll and figure out what works best for people, but is anyone opposed to this idea beyond just finding a time? And I can give you some more context about, you know, why we think it's important, but does anyone just really feel strongly about keeping this time? No, okay. Well, in that case, I guess we won't be able to vote on a specific time before sending out a poll. But we could have an action item to send out a poll and tentatively plan to move the meeting date, and then we could finalize that later. So does anyone want a motion for that?
Yeah, this is Steve, well, can I just say something before I make a motion on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the idea is a very good one. Yeah, we definitely need to reverse order here, like an advisory before this meeting. We'll figure out specific scheduling. The other thing I would say though, unless I heard Shani wrong, would be give yourself enough time, because you may need to, digest what came out of advisory meeting. I wouldn't make it close. I mean, there's going to be different options out there, but give yourself enough of an interval, right, where you can assimilate what you heard in advisory in terms of what the implications or ramifications would be for the advisory group, right? I'm sorry, not the advisory group, the set group. So, anyways, I think it works. It's just a matter of specifics right now. Send it out. All right. Sorry about that. So with that, I would move that. Let's make a motion that we go ahead and reverse the order, put advisory board first, and that authorizing you go ahead and send out a survey to determine what that specific time would be.
Great.
I'll second that motion.
Great. Okay, we can vote on that, and then Michael is reminding us that we didn't actually vote on the agenda, so maybe we can do that first and then vote on the item that I just raised. I'll re-raise it, but thank you, Michael. So I'll share my screen with our agenda and
Rescind your motion and then just make another motion to rescind your motion off the floor and then move to approve the agenda, and then we could go back to.
Cool. Yeah, we'll rescind the motion to vote on the set force meeting time, and I will now entertain a motion to approve this agenda.
Kayla, you already had a motion from Steve and a second from Anna Linden. Just didn't call for the vote.
Oh, got it. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Great.
Aye.
Okay, now we will raise again the motion to send out a poll and change the meeting time contingent upon finding a time that works for everyone. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second, Steve.
Okay, all right. Well, you will receive that from me and we'll definitely work around your.
Don't we have to vote on that?
I'm sorry, what?
Don't we have to actually vote?
Yes, apologies. Great. Could all in favor raise their virtual hands?
Aye.
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 my virtual voice.
Great. Any opposed? All right. Let's see. So next on our agenda, we have something that we've been discussing also amongst our team, which is an item to potentially discuss workforce development related to sustainable economy at our task force meeting in May. And so I will caveat this with, we have a lot of topics in the state plan, and a lot of you are experts in very specific subjects among those. And so, given that we're going to be checking in with you individually, and that it's really the advisory council that's going to be giving some direction on what they want to see with those priority items, we thought that for the task force, it could make more sense to choose some topics that are cross-cutting across the state plan. So things like workforce, we thought would be a good, we know that you all are kind of engaging in conversations about workforce already with the governor's office, for example. And so we think that people will be ready to discuss this, and that it could potentially be beneficial to have a cross-cutting conversation about workforce. I know we have some civil society groups who might be interested in presenting, but also more so just to have an idea of what each agency is working on in terms of workforce development for sustainable economy. So I don't know, Michael, if you wanted to say any more about this. It was Michael who had brought this up as a possibility for us.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kayla. The idea came about because found out recently that MNERD and NMED both have workforce development staff. And given that it's it's a big issue right now, right? In terms of filling a lot of the job needs around the state, whether that's construction, whether it's some of the new manufacturing plants that are coming in. We thought it might be a good idea just to kind of have a kind of an overarching discussion about what the different agencies are doing, maybe some of the community groups and what they're doing in regards to this. But it's a central issue that I think we're all really concerned about how we're going to address. So thought it might be good to do a kind of a comprehensive interagency conversation about it.
Yeah, and I think that's spot on. And I think the state plan is one of the avenues for discussing how industry need meets talent and skills that we have here in the state. And of course, the target sectors are something to push towards as we diversify the New Mexico economy. So we would love to facilitate a conversation about how we ensure that the talents and skills and educational opportunities we have here in the state are matching the needs in existing and emerging industries. Do we have any folks that want to comment on this from our task force, or have thoughts on how best to approach?
This is Steve. So at State Land Office, we're one of the agencies that is not doing any workforce related. That being said, I think this is an excellent idea. Obviously, it's central to, I think, what we're all trying to focus on and help plan for them and help transform right now. And so I think workforce would be really good and really timely. I think what would be a couple elements that would be really important right now would be the question of the transferability of, let's say, skills for people who are, let's say, working in the oil field or natural gas right now, to either renewable generation. And also, I know Economic Development Department and other communities had some success with some of the component, production firms, right? They're coming in right now, Maxion and others, I guess. And so I think the timing would be really good for this right now. And so I like the idea. Thanks.
Okay, I think we had Raquel and then Anna Linden.
Hi, good morning. Kayla, I think this is a great idea and opportunity. DWS is already having these conversations and participating in grant opportunities and, program development with MNERD, with environment, where we're in the governor's infrastructure team, but bringing those conversations together as a part of Set Force or SCAC is bringing those conversations here within this group, and it would really give us an opportunity to I guess expand on the conversation or expand on the opportunity and really get DWS or the workforce where we need to be, and really communicate those needs for the other agencies and the other priorities that maybe we don't know about. So we're definitely in support of participating.
Great, Anna Linden?
I think Raquel covered a lot of what I was going to say. So seconding all of that, and also if we're talking about oil field workers and new opportunities, we should be talking about geothermal. But that's a conversation maybe we can have during that part of our work here. The only thing that I might add is that it would be useful to have something a little bit more structured or collaborative than just a everyone shares something structure, because there have been times where we don't know what each other are doing, but we're not as badly off as we sometimes have been. So doing something with that knowledge might be a suggestion I'd have for how we'd structure the time. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment, and we can certainly even narrow it down to things like remediation or geothermal, things that are directly in line with some of the state's objectives for renewable energy workforce development, especially because that is one of the taskers with the DWS report and things along those lines. So yeah, great comment. Patricia?
Yeah, good morning. I just want to also echo what my colleagues just said, and let you know that we did something similar to this about getting everybody on the same page in the teacher education workforce conversation, where we created an asset map to really talk about, to come together. It did take us, like an afternoon of coming together with different agencies, different stakeholders, but to really understand that lay of the landscape, because on one hand, that really helps us to see where our resources are, and then in planning for the interim and perhaps other asks that we may need next year, helps us to plan in a unified way. So for instance, I don't know if she jumped on, but I've been meaning to reach out to Breezy Gutierrez from PED, precisely because they got a lot of funding for CTE. But as HED, we don't really have a sense of what the programs and the plans are for that. And so just wanting to really be in sync with our sister agencies and with the field so that we know that we're working in unison. So for instance, this year, adult education at HED got $6 million, so $2 million over the next 3 years to develop IETs. I know that our director, Amber Gallup, is really interested in connecting that to, the renewable economy. What are those trainings that we can develop with that new funding? And so I think that if we could all, I know that everybody's busy, and so to find like a chunk of time, like 2 or 3 hours is always difficult, but sometimes there's just more that you can accomplish when we're all together face to face, having the conversations than doing it piecemeal in a meeting once a month.
Yeah, that's a great point. Anybody else have comments they want to share on this? I don't see any. So what I'm going to propose that we could do is present you with a possible format for this in next month's meeting, and you can approve that or amend it as necessary. And we'll circulate it as well by email. You can send us comments, and we can make sure, like Anna Linden was saying, that it's a productive conversation not just a sharing circle, but something with an objective, and maybe we narrow that down to some target fields, or, we'll give you a few ideas about how we can approach this. But for now, maybe we can just vote on making the May meeting a workforce focused meeting. So I will entertain a motion to do so. And we can vote. Is there a motion?
So moved. It's Michael C.
Michael, is there a second?
Seconded.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Any opposed? Okay. So we will have a workforce focused meeting in May. And now we're going to move to some updates that I have for you all. It has been a time of gathering information to see how we can improve the way that these bodies work, getting everything into shape, bringing capacity. I'm on board now. We've had some great support from Michael Leon Guerrero from the Center for Civic Policy. EDD had a policy fellow named Thomas Silva join us this week from Cornell Law School, and he's going to be, devoting his time and research skills to these topics as well. So it's an exciting time because, our advisory council members are unpaid. It is a big burden for them to take on this advisory function without added capacity like what we have now. And so since October, when I arrived, I've been assessing the state of things, bringing myself up to speed on prior meetings that you all have had. I've been watching those because we do have recordings. And so on high speed, I've watched like over 24 hours of footage from past task force and advisory council meetings, and really wanted to understand what the initial intentions and hopes were for these bodies, and then where we actually landed. And I think where we landed was in part a function of not having that added capacity. So, now that I'm here, now that we have some extra support, we're hoping to harmonize the advisory council and the task force a little bit more so, and see them working together. I think it's great that we had approval today to change the task force meeting to come after the advisory council meeting so that we can see the advisory council advising the task force. And, I think what might happen is that SEEK has visions and ideas, and you all have some of the know-how on a bureaucratic and agency level about how to make those ideas happen. And we have the state plan as an instrument for those ideas. So, in prior years, they were obviously contractors and consultants doing updates to the plan. And, despite the fact they worked really hard at that, I think, the problem of not having a continuous point of contact and sort of institutional memory of that process is that maybe, we're not handing off the baton as well as we could with having some continuity. So our hope is to have a continued conversation, not just with updates to the plan, but, in terms of community involvement and what you guys are working on, and including, folks have raised in the past that if we can make this function well, we can get on top of the legislative process and be thinking about inputs that the advisory council has intend to be engaging with, things like interim committees. So we want to ensure a really robust process. I've been listening to your concerns. I've spoken with most of you as part of our updates on different items and recommendations in the plan in January. And so we did check in with Michael, and myself checked in with 48 individuals representing 18 state agencies. We had COGS, we had economic development and business partners. So we have a really good understanding about where these recommendations are sitting at the moment. And in the process, I also, collected your feedback about how the task force is actually going, the level of knowledge and involvement that you've had with the state plan in the past. And I'm definitely taking into account the improvements that you want to see, that the advisory council wants to see. And I think we're really excited moving forward to put that into practice. And so based on these conversations, some of the inputs that I've gotten is, very simple things like the plan is really long. There are a lot of recommendations. It's a lot to wrap our heads around. And oftentimes, even though it is this long-term kind of visionary document, people also want shorter-term items that they can work on. That's something in a meeting many moons ago that Anna Linden brought up, is that, agencies kind of need their marching orders each year that they can work on, and something digestible and feasible and manageable for a shorter time frame. So we definitely intend to balance the long-term aspirations of these bodies with also some short-term objectives that fit into that. And the difference this year in terms of state plan updates is that instead of having a contractor, I will be working on that document personally. So that's to say that I'm here to have discussions with anyone who wants to talk about that. Ultimately, it's the advisory council that will be leading on this front. And then now that we're moving the dates of our meetings, we'll have conversations on the back end of those advisory council conversations and recommendations about, how do we put some of this into practice. There were also ideas early on to have some task force members, wherever relevant, joining working groups that the advisory council had wanted to conduct. And so, we've had some positive progress in the form of getting 2 of those up and running within the last month. And those 2 groups are the tribal engagement group and the community engagement group. And there were a couple others proposed pertaining to industry and the Permian Basin. We did prioritize the community engagement and tribal engagement groups because I wanted that as a preface to anything that we are going to do in terms of community and tribal engagement, not to be confused with consultation, of course, but really want to take our cues from SEEK in terms of how we do that type of engagement. So we're excited to have those running, and they're going to be having their first meeting soon. And then we also had in January, of course, what Chair Kobiwa had presented, the legislative statement that SEEK had devised. And so I think we're seeing some positive progress, and things are functioning really well, and we're excited to get going into more of like a regular pattern here. I know these bodies have been in existence for a bit, and now that we have that capacity, we're hoping that we can make it work as well as possible. So yeah, I just want to say I'm putting together kind of a write-up of what I noticed and observed based on my conversations with you, based on my conversations with the advisory council members, based on watching these past meetings. And I will deliver that to both bodies just so that we have a document that takes stock of where we wanted to go, where we're at, where we're going, and then we can move forward all together. But at this point, I'll just open it up to task force members to let me know if they have any comments or feedback on that. And then later we can move to public comment. But first, does anybody on the task force have anything they'd like to share with regard to how we proceed? Hi, James.
Hi all, my apologies. I'm also in an airport, so if it's too much background noise, please let me know and I can just put my comments in the chat. But and apologies for being late. I'm traveling, obviously. I just wanted to thank Kayla and Michael for all your hard work in working to get us organized. And I'm really looking forward to all the work that we can get done. And I wanted to make 2 points. Encourage council members, if you have capacity, to please join us at SEEK meetings or join us within our working group meetings that are going to be starting up. Next Tuesday, we'll be meeting in the city of Espanola at the, I believe, at the city council building. Which I'm excited about because I'm from Oqueo, Pueblo, and Espanola. I also wanted to note that we do have at least one vacant position on SEEK that is appointed by the Indian Affairs Department, and I look forward to working with Indian Affairs to ensure that we can fill that position. But thank you all for continuing to be engaged in this work.
Oops, sorry, I was muted. Anna Linden.
Thanks, Kayla. And I wanted to echo what James said about really appreciate you taking what sounds like a considerable amount of time to really immerse yourself in what this group has done previously and what could be done in the future. I think there is a lot of opportunity here. I've always kind of felt like the set force was underused. And I wanted also to acknowledge what James just offered us, which is this opportunity to come to the SEEK meetings and to make a small request, which is, as much in advance as possible, can we know when they are and where they will be? Because that will make it much easier to plan for travel, like up to Espanola, because I know that I won't be able to make that one this month, and I'm disappointed about that, just because I didn't know about it. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
And that's actually on our agenda, is to approve the calendar for the year. So we'll be finalized that. We'll provide
and
it
just
to you
to
all.
communicate that between the two bodies more thoroughly, like when our meetings are and when your meetings are, just so that we can get that cross-pollination that you were talking about.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And as James was saying, we're actually releasing the schedule for SEEK for the entire year. And that's not just where and when the meetings will be, but it's also, we've lined it up so that state plan priorities are covered in each of the meetings. There are 9 of them. We do have to double up in order to make sure that we get all of them. So I will draw special attention to each relevant appointed task force member or designee so that they can make sure, especially, that they're able to attend and participate in the meetings where, relevant subject matter is being discussed. And then we will, along with the topic of workforce for May, we'll be brainstorming we have some ideas for other topics that we might cover in the task force, like I said, that cut across all of those topics. And something simple I can do is just, right now, the way I have the invites, it's task force members receiving the notifications for the task force, and same with the advisory council, but we'll just go ahead and add both to both so that, that way you guys can, and of course, feel free to decline the invites or tell me if you don't want to be on both, but I think that's a great point. You can just add everyone. Michael, did you have something were you going to say about the location in Espanola?
Well, yes, there is that about the location. So it's not actually going to be at City Hall. There's a renovated convent that the city has done. So the meeting is actually going to be there. But what I wanted to point out is also, as Kayla said, we're going to be doing different topics focusing on the strategic plan priorities every month. And along with that, we're actually going to give homework to the advisory council. So what we'll do is we'll cite where in the document, if we're focusing like on outdoor recreation, where does that show up in the strategic plan so folks can review that going into the meeting? So I'm just wondering, Kayla, is that something that maybe the set force would be interested in? We can send you all that list as well. So after we have the SEEK meeting, then you all have some context about what we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. I think we can do that, and those are things that you all can kind of complete or not at your convenience. We hope that you'll be really engaged. We understand that everyone's busy. As with the advisory council, we're trying to make it as easy for them as possible to engage on this, but yeah, we will be outlining for each meeting where the topics appear within the plan, and hoping that you will want to engage with us on that. And that includes also offline, if you want to have conversations about a particular section or you have questions. We do, because we're not going to be covering every priority or sector in the set force meetings, we do also plan to have one-on-ones with you to hash out what it looks like to bring the visions from SEEK into practice within the plan and with recommendations for the agencies. So yeah, we want to be as engaged as possible. Does anyone else have anything to add before we move to public comment? Steve?
Yeah, Steve, I think a lot of, how I feel has been said. I think it's been well said, but I really like a few different things about the approach. And I do agree, thanks for doing the deep dive in terms of past meetings and the plan and what's been done and what needs to be done. And I mean, just essentially walking the perimeter, which is a huge perimeter when you're talking about sustainable economy. And I feel like in some cases, our meetings have really been so broad that we really haven't been able to achieve as much as could be done. Given that, I mean, I think our main strength is you've got a whole bunch of agencies here that have a lot of programming, a lot of efforts underway, and also a lot of intelligence about what's happening in the marketplace and where the gaps are. And so I think Anna Linda said this, but use this, because we probably have been underutilized, and I think this is a more systematic approach. I think it's time for a more systematic approach, and it also sounds like you've got things well underway. And it probably, because it's such a huge, complex, filled with complexities, right? Area in terms of how do we best make this transition? What's being done well? Where are the gaps? Where do we need to apply resources? I think the idea of topics is probably the way to go. We'll see how, and I really do. And I think starting with workforce is pretty good as well. So this is really important. I mean, this is really a rethrust, for set, right? And I think it's an appropriate way to go. If you need to modify or tinker, obviously, we can all do that. We're in support of what you're trying to achieve in Economic Development Department. But I mean, ultimately, it's like, I think we've got programs. We could add, all of us could add programs. We're all working different parts of this. And so I think we can help identify, let's say, workforce. Well, where are the gaps? What are you hearing from enterprises that are, in renewable space right now? How should that be defined? And I think that intelligence we can add that would be of value, in terms of what needs to be done to the overall need to make significant progress in terms of the transition to a sustainable economy. And so it's a good way to go. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly. And it is the Sustainable Economy Task Force. So let's let that guide what we're talking about. And I'm certainly open to suggestions on some of these other topics we may cover besides workforce. I'm also going to be asking the advisory council what they'd like to see in terms of agency conversations. So please email me if you have thoughts or ideas. Do we have any other task force members that wanted to add something before we move to public comment? Okay, well, seeing none, I think we can move into public comment and then we will adjourn. Does anyone have comments from the public today? I see a hand from Tom Singer from Welk.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got two suggestions to make. And it kind of builds off of what the gentleman from the State Land Office was just saying about how you do intelligence about what companies need. With respect to the workforce work and possibly with the plan update, I'd like to suggest that you rope in the state development finance institutions that aren't, I don't believe, are currently represented. Some are on the set force, but some aren't. And I'd like to point out that this is kind of analogous to what happened to the Opportunity Enterprise Fund, which is run by NMFA. Some of you may be aware that as they were doing their lending program, they became aware of housing issues with the companies that they were lending money to. And last session, the legislature, in addition to refilling their coffers for lending, gave them a $125 million appropriation for housing projects, subject to some additional legislation. I don't know whether that passed this session or needs to pass next session, but that's a pretty stunning number. And so here you have a lending institution realizing that their companies have a housing problem analogous to a workforce development program. So I'd flag entities like NMFA, which runs the Opportunity Enterprise Fund, the New Mexico Venture Capital Fund, and the State Small Business Credit Initiative. And that's like a ton of money. It's great that Steve's on from the SIC. They run a New Mexico public private equity program that invests a heck of a lot of money in funds that invest in part in New Mexico. And there may be a way to integrate their investment activity in this issue. There's the New Climate Investment Center. There's the Advanced Energy Award Pilot Program that's closed, but I'm not quite sure where they're at. And that's the UNM Rainforest Innovation Group. So there's a whole bunch of entities out there lending money and investing money to private companies that might have plenty of intelligence on the workforce issue and possibly on the statewide plan update. I guess I'll just stop there. So thank you for giving me the time to make this comment.
Thank you, Tom. Does anyone else have a comment? And I see that Secretary Doucette just joined us. Hello. Any other public comments? Okay, well, seeing none, I think we will now entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion?
So moved, Robert Doucette.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor? Raise your hand or say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Great, well, seeing none, we will now adjourn this meeting of the Sustainable Economy Task Force on March 20th, 2024 at 10:25 a.m. And thanks so much for joining today.
Thanks, Kayla.
Bye, everybody.